Black Power, peace and love, Hotep.
Hotep.
I'm sitting here with your brother, Omnipotent, and we're just kicking the raps, and we just thought that maybe we'll let you inside of what we discussing. Today we're discussing the great book
Marcus Garvey, continuing from yesterday, World's Great Men of Color.
by J.A Rogers. And what we're doing is having a critical discussion on Marcus Garvey. Some of the stuff that we find ourselves getting into, we almost become like super Christians with it. And you know, we can't criticize the next man, or you know, you better not never say anything about Farrakhan or some shit like that. So what we're doing is we're going through some of the mistakes that Mark Garvey made and building up his legacy. And the best person that ever did it, in my personal opinion, was J.A Rogers in the book of
World's Great Men of Color, Volume 2.
Volume 2. So, Brother Omnipotent is going to pick up where he left off, and we're going to just have a little small discussion.
No doubt. Hotep family, Hotep. During his conventions, Madison Square Garden, with its capacity of 25,000, was filled to overflowing. The platform contained hundreds of delegates from the American states, Central and South America, and Africa. In response to his appeals for funds came vast heaps of dollar bills, which had to be stuffed into suitcases like waste paper to haul them off. Peace, family. At that time, bookkeeping had not been introduced into the Universal Negro Improvement Association. For the remainder of August, the delegates met at Liberty Hall, the Garvey Center in Harlem, a low-roof, hot zinc-covered building that held 6,000 persons. Garvey's successes stirred his enemies to greater activity, thereby increasing the wasp-like devotion of his partisans. Admirers and sycophants buzzed around him in swarms. He was hailed as the greatest man of all time, as another Moses and another Christ, the two greatest G's in the world. Said one of his admirers, "Our God and Garvey?" Like Napoleon, Mussolini, Hitler, and other dictators, Garvey himself was none too modest, and he too joined the chorus. The more he was praised, the greater he became the frenzy of his followers. The more he was praised, the greater became the frenzy of his followers, many of whom were virtually ready to sally out and attack the whites anywhere.
That's right.
Among the many activities of Garvey's movement was the formation of an African Legion.
That's right.
The members of which carried guns and swords and fervent belief that the day was near when they would be using them against the whites in Africa and elsewhere. It was, in short, racial fascism. He seemed to have believed honestly that the best way to right the wrongs of his people was to resort to adopting the modus operandi of the racial imperialists he was fighting. In other words, for everything white they had, he would have something black. For instance,
That's right.
he promised the Black House side by side with the White House in Washington. He himself declared that his movement was fascistic, F-A-S-C-I-S-T-I-C. He said we were the first fascists. We had disciplined men, women, and children in training for the liberation of Africa. The black masses saw that in his extreme nationalism lay their only hope and readily supported it. Mussolini copied fascism from me, but the Negro reactionary sabotaged it. So I believe that was the words of Marcus Garvey.
That's right.
Opposition against him increased, while his followers became more fanatic. One of them sent a chopped-off human hand to A. Philip Randolph, editor of The Messenger, one of his leading opponents. Beside the movement, too, all was not harmony. In it were Negroes who were better educated than Garvey and with more practical, more liberal, and more advanced views, and who did not regard him as an oracle. Some of them were no doubt jealous, too, of the adulation showered on them. Others inside the movement denounced them as medieval, autocratic, and anti-mulatto. Some of his once most faithful supporters attacked him violently in print and founded counter-organizations. One of these, his lieutenant, Reverend J.W. Eason, known as the American leader, was shot to death as he was leaving a church in New Orleans by a fanatical Garveyite at Garvey's instigation, it was charged. His enemies concentrated their attack on the steamship program. Up to now, it existed only on paper, though he collected huge sums of money for it. Under their pressure, he bought a ship, the SS Yarmouth.
That's right.
Which he rechristened the Frederick Douglass and launched with great ceremony in New York. This, however, was at the close of the First World War, when ships were at a premium, being in demand for bringing back American troops from Europe. Once the troops were back, however, ships became a drug on the market and could be bought for a song. Indeed, the government burned or sank hundreds of its ships. The Yarmouth was rightly called a floating coffin. That's the meaning of Yarmouth. He paid $165,000 cash for it, and a year or so later, sold it for junk at $1,600. I'm gonna stop there today, so we have more to build on tomorrow.
That's right. That's right. So let's just go over a review what Brother John just read in terms of some of the stuff Garvey had to deal with, and some of the things that members had to deal with in trying to build Garvey reality, Garvey's dream of reality, should I say. But one thing that stuck out the most was the fact that Garvey had this extreme ego, you know, almost to the point where even for his good, he would not hear it. You know what I'm saying? So when they break down that Garvey had an issue with some of the elite people that Garvey was working with, you know, some of his trusted followers, you know, that could be one of the downfalls to the movement. You see, Garvey spoke for the downtrodden, those who didn't want to, you know, those people that society didn't want to deal with, Garvey spoke for, you know, and this is what attracted Garvey, you know, attracted that power that Garvey had, because now the downtrodden had a voice, you know what I'm saying? But what happens when your ego becomes too big, you know?
Ain't that what the doctor, I believe Dr. Clark said something about that.
Yes.
Is the ego the one thing that keeps us separate?
Right. But not to mistake it. We don't want to, you know, kill the ego or just beat up the ego as if it's just some bad thing.
Or like it's the only reason.
Right. What it is egos have to be regulated, have to be balanced. I think that this is where Ma'at comes in important, you know, because it really teaches you to balance your ego. You know, one of our principles in the laws of Ma'at says, have faith in the master teacher to teach me the truth, and have faith that I will wield that truth. You dig what I'm saying? So what I mean is, if we're building, we have to have consideration for people that may have a little bit more knowledge than ours. When you started out, you said that the UNIA didn't have sufficient bookkeeping. You know, so what we're saying is money
Yeah,
is
they
just,
said it wasn't even
developed.
Yeah,
So money is just floating. Money is just floating everywhere. And what it does is it causes confusion, it causes jealousy, misunderstanding. You live in the way you live in, you know, better than I'm living. You dig what I'm saying? But let me just say this though. Garvey died broke. So no matter how much money may have been misplaced or has been used, we know that Garvey wasn't using it for his own personal being.
That's right.
His own personal wealth.
He was giving that to the people.
Exactly. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, there's many things that we can touch on Garvey, but one thing I can say about this book is it's critical. It's not one of those books that we read where it just praises the individual, but it actually outlines some of the problems that they have. You know, the fact that Garvey had followers loyal enough to send 8 Philip Randolph a chopped off head, you know, let you know how serious business was back then. And how, if you're not careful, your ego can become or be perceived as what they described him, a madman, or what they described him in there. They described Garvey as a mastermind or something like that. What was it?
Yeah, what did they say?
An evil dictator and
yeah, they was comparing to Mussolini and Hitler and. medieval, autocratic,
Yeah.
anti-mulatto,
Yes.
something else. They did not regard him as an oracle. Some of them were no doubt jealous too. The adulation showered on him.
Right.
Counter organizations.
And some revered him as a. But I mean, in any case, you know what I'm saying. This is what happens when you in organizations. I know I've dealt with the same type of criticism, you know, from people that I work with, you know. But one thing I will say is, you know, sometimes we might start the race together, but we don't finish. You know, but the race has to be finished. You know, so and saying that, race first. You know, anything you want to say, Brother John?
No, I went back up in here and listening to, they talking about he was hailed as the greatest man of all time.
Right.
As another Moses.
Right.
And another Christ, the two greatest G's in the world, right?
That's right.
That's what they said.
That's right. But his critics, you know, and those who fell out with Garvey, you know, had some unflattering words, you know, based on the experience that they had, you know, with the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So it's all interesting, though.
Yeah, man.
You know, it's all interesting. And what we encourage is to get Volume 2, World's Great Men of Color. You know, J.A. Rogers wrote this book so that we can Sankofa now and go into these books with a critical thinking, you know, not just as a fan or somebody who might worship this individual, but, you know, somebody who really wants to find solution to our problems and will go through every crack and crevices to find that solution. You dig what I'm saying? Yeah. So, you know, a BV-48,
yes,
Black
a
Power,
BV-48,
you know,
race first.
You know, until
Black
tomorrow,
Power.
You know, we'll be back. Black Power.
1353 Jefferson Avenue. Come see us tomorrow.
Yes, sir.